Good morning, everyone. We're going to give everyone a minute or two to kind of join us, and then we will get started. So we've got some people coming in. All right, what do you think, guys? Want to kick it off?
We're ready to roll.
All right, I'm going to pull up station here. It is coming right in. Okie doke. Let's get started. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our webinar called How to Turn Your Digital Signage from a Cost Center into a Profit Center. My name is Doug Schaefer. I'm the Chief Technology Officer at American Sound, and I'm joined by some awesome panelists. We're going to roll through some introductions real quick, and then we are going to get started. So to kick us off, I'm going to go first. I'm Doug. I'm the CTO of American Sound. I've been working with audiovisual and digital signage services and development solutions for probably 5 to 7 years. Been working with my friends here and my partners, AppSpace and Utelligy, and for at least half of that time. And really excited to kind of lay out some solutions for you guys today about integrating advertising and other solutions with your digital signage to make it more valuable. So I'll turn it over to Will to introduce himself.
Thanks, Doug. Hey, everybody. I'm Will White. I'm Director of Strategic Workplace Innovation at AppSpace. I've been at AppSpace just a little over 13 years, and I've had a number of roles during that time, as you might expect, including, for example, running our global technical sales and deployment teams. But these days, I really focus on these kind of instrumental strategic partnerships like we have with Utelligy and American Sound to help AppSpace customers or folks just interested in AppSpace get the most out of the platform, even beyond what AppSpace itself offers, which is a lot of what we're going to be talking about today. So with that, I'll pass it to Mike.
Thanks, Will. Hello, everybody. Mike Gleason. I am the Chief Revenue Officer of Americas for Utelligy Corporation. I've been working alongside our partners, AppSpace and American Sound, for a while now. I've been a veteran of the IT industry for longer than I'd like to say, and I'm really happy to be here today to bring this content to you. A little housekeeping. Our presentation is going to go about 35-40 minutes. We're going to leave 10 minutes towards the end for some Q&A. So if you have any questions you'd like to ask us, please put it in the chat and we'll address them at the end.
All right. Thanks, Mike. Yeah, so just to kind of get us a little bit of context here, digital signage has undergone quite a decent bit of development and innovation over the past 5 or so years, especially with the pandemic going on and organizations starting to emphasize a return to work and starting to get more ROI on their technology solutions that are tied to physical spaces for real estate investment purposes. And so a lot of what we're going to talk about in this webinar today is stuff that me and Mike and Will and the rest of the teams at AppSpace and American Sound and Utelligy have kind of developed as a mechanism to create those opportunities for organizations that are looking to get better investment or return on investment from their technology and also have better ways to kind of deploy and support it. So to start us off, I'm going to turn over to Will White, and we are going to go through the context behind digital signage.
Thanks, Doug. So just to set the stage here, as Doug mentioned, right, this has become an increasing focus with a lot of organizations these days. Digital signage isn't a new concept. Obviously, we've all seen it, both internal facing digital signage as well as external, maybe in stores and things like that. But the opportunity that digital signage allows has become at the forefront of a lot of people's strategies these days, especially with RTO, with the expansion of in-office experiences, and even the more effective use of those kind of spaces, whether it's an office, a public space, a commercial space, or so on. What isn't new is that digital displays, digital signage are a cost center, right? There is an expense to deploying digital signage and maintaining it. There's the initial expense if there isn't already signage in place, right? Getting the displays, maybe getting media players and so on. All of the software backing that deployment. Of course, that costs some money to roll out and to maintain, right? On that annual basis, whether that's actual like kind of hard costs, right? Maybe it's equipment updates, refreshes, maybe you need new capabilities and so on, or the soft costs, right, of actual man hours, all the folks that spend their time, day after day, week after week, maintaining the actual technology infrastructure that supports that signage, or supporting the actual content itself, right, publishing messaging, publishing marketing and advertising content, making sure the right content showing at the right time in the right place, right? Those are real costs. And traditionally, the type of signage that we often see is really focused on internal content, right? And that is critical. There is value there. You are offsetting costs in a way when focused on that type of internal messaging and so on, maybe team building, culture building, announcements, product information, updates, etc. There's certainly value there, right? It builds cohesiveness. It makes sure that everyone's in the know. But it's typically not the type of value that you see on a spreadsheet, right? So what we're really digging into today is how do you offset that spreadsheet cost, so to speak? How do you start potentially generating revenue with these displays per month and offset some of those hard costs in addition to the intangible benefits and value that you get from digital signage? So again, as I mentioned, signage isn't new. It brings a lot of value in a lot of different ways. And traditionally, we can look at that in a few different aspects. One is a better customer experience, and also internally a better employee experience. As I mentioned, it's a way to keep people in the know in a method that's hard to miss, right? So for customers, for clients that may be visiting, whether again it's an actual commercial like storefront or something like that, or even a semi-public or private space where you are bringing in customers or clients, it's going to create a better experience. It's going to create a more cohesive, attractive space, right? A more modern space, and allow for that instantaneous messaging and update in a way that's just easy to absorb, right? It's not a missed email. It's not like a pamphlet or flyer you'll blow right past. There's a lot of value there. It's also a great way to modernize that brand image. Like I said, it creates a much more attractive space. It makes sure that as the brand evolves, as all brands do, right, as marketing efforts, as branding efforts continue to expand and focus on new aspects of the brand, deploying that sort of thing to signage is a breeze, right? That's one of the big advantages. And of course, going hand in hand with that, it reduces administrative costs. You're not printing out, poster board, right? You're not having to roll out piece by piece new messaging, new branding, new marketing materials. That can happen instantaneously. And it's especially maximized, as we note there, if you're using a signage platform and supporting technologies that can cover the entire deployment, both internal comms as well as external and so on, maybe even pulling information from different sources, not just traditional kind of marketing materials, etc. That cost to manage goes way down. But what we can layer on top of that, right, is kind of a revenue-enabled deployment, right? All those things are still true for any type of signage deployment that I mentioned above, but if we're able to build in some revenue sources, we can start looking at a payback on that infrastructure investment. So that after that initial, hurdle of deployment and budget and all of that to get those screens up, get them displaying content, right, build that experience, we can hopefully pay some of that back, not just in those soft value, but the actual hard value of bringing money in, and then maybe even potentially turn a profit, right, depending on the deployment and the scale and what we're able to deploy, so that it becomes an actual profit driver, right? It becomes green on that spreadsheet versus red, and on top of that, even if it's not, a profit, that money can be a profit that just goes into the bank, right? That money coming in can self-fund those refresh cycles. So I alluded to earlier, right? Sometimes there's a cost. Maybe you want to refresh your signage deployment, up the technology. Maybe you want to do, beautiful 8K content in the lobby or in the storefront or something like that, right? You might want to update your technology. This is a way to offset those costs. So thinking about, before we get into some of the specifics and some of the architecture that would lend to all of this, thinking about some of the fundamentals when it comes to that revenue model, I think it's important to just think about why this is important to consider, and that's some of those competitive advantages we highlight there on the right. Signage, by definition, gives you a captive and a high value audience. I alluded to this earlier, but it's one of the most effective ways in a physical space, again, front of house, back of house, in between, to actually get a message out there, right? In a 5-second lull, in a 30-minute wait, whatever it is, people are going to clock that signage. They're going to see that attractive content, right? There's motion, there's visuals, etc., and they're going to absorb it, right? It can be much more effective than many other models. And it's much more effective because that signage is going to be placed appropriately. You're not putting signage in a storage closet. You're putting it in areas where people are going to see it. And that signage is by definition in your environment, right? It's something you control. And therefore, kind of the trust that you build with your clients, with your customers, and again, your employees, your teammates, is going to carry over, right? This is an official deployment. It's not just a flyer like plastered on a wall by who knows who did that. So thinking about that actual content, right? Those revenue generating pieces of content. One thing we always like to emphasize, I think all three of us on the call, is to create an appropriate content mix. Now, some signage can be purely advertising driven. We've all seen that. But especially for these kind of hybrid or omni-channel deployments, it's really effective to have a mix of content, a mix of your own content, as we say. So your messaging, your announcements, your product launches, and all those sorts of things that, of course, you want to get out there, whether it's to external audiences or internal, as well as maybe even tools like wayfinding and so on, right? Turn-by-turn directions, really helpful stuff, mixed in with that actual revenue generating content, advertising, and so on. That's critical even for purely internal facing signage. I always harp on this because you want to keep that content loop fresh, right? It's the same content is never good, but even the same type of content looping, you're going to start to lose eye. So having that mix and match, I think, is critical. Also makes it easier, right, to keep that signage more dynamic as you fill in both of those styles of content. And then as we move into the revenue sources, it's important to get a little bit creative here. And this is where I think all of us are really excited to help anyone watching the webinar live or maybe reviewing it after the fact, come up with some of these ideas. Because it's not just, it can be very traditional advertising as people can think of it, but it's not just that. So for example, like local business partnerships. This could be helpful or valuable in any deployment, but I always think, especially like internal signage deployments, where maybe the primary audience, you might have visitors coming in, clients, but especially like your teammates, right, employees, a way to give an avenue for local businesses to highlight their lunch special, right? If you're in the office, you're probably going to lunch. I know I'm doing that. Great way to give those folks a little bit more reach to like a really valuable audience, right? They know they're reaching people that are local, at least during the workday, that are going to probably pay attention, right, and take a visit. Kind of on the other end, right, maybe national brand advertising and complementary industries, right? Things that are going to resonate with anyone visiting your location, again, storefront or back of house, that can be complementary to what you do today, right? There's a great pitch there to other sources of advertising. Another big one that I think is really valuable are services, right? Premium services, cross promotion there. Now, this could be services that you offer that, if you're anything like me, you're always like working to make sure everybody knows everything that your company does, that you have available. It's not just the literal product itself, or this could be other folks that you work well with, that you team up with. I mean, that's kind of what we're doing on this webinar, right? To provide services that take your product, your offering, your service to that next level. I think it's a great way to highlight that, to bring more value to customers, to clients, and so on. Again, and expose it in a way that wouldn't be quite as obvious. And then lastly, we touch on strategic co-marketing arrangements. It's a fancy way to saying, right, kind of like business partnerships, right? Working together with partners and so on. I know we talk about this a lot at AppSpace because we work with a lot of partners like American Sound and Utiligy. How do we go out and how do we get the message out, right? We're both kind of working in the same direction, even if our products and offerings are slightly different. So how do we actually bring all that together and show the value that that combined offering can make? That's where, again, signage can play a key role. You can, when working with partners that maybe fit in your industry, you can offer that to them and say, hey, like, we're working together. Here's a great avenue to be able to get this joint message out via our signage deployment. So hopefully that kind of gets the gears turning at a very high level. With that, I do want to toss it over to Mike to keep this train going.
Thanks, Will. So I think Will did a great job of really explaining how do we transform the business case. He gave some great examples of revenue model fundamentals. All that is something that you need to put in place, but you also need to think about how am I going to protect the revenue? What are the types of steps that I need to make as part of my strategy to protect the revenue? And I think two key components of that are how do we make sure when we roll out our digital signage infrastructure that we have a platform in place that can help us go from reactive to proactive, from managing and monitoring our environment, as well as ensure that we have a partner that can manage and monitor the solution 24/7. If you look at really what revenue leakage looks like, something as simple as a single failed display for 8 hours, that's lost revenue. And I think everybody understands that these types of advertising platforms, if you have down signage, there's going to be an SLA and there's going to be revenue clawback. If you look at a 5% daily failure rate, an 8-hour detection, that's more money that you're losing. These ultimately come down to annual unmonitored failure impact and probably not going to be able to get a renewal on the contract you have today. Other stats that aren't included here is that the industry surveys find up to 80% of digital rollouts fail because of missed performance targets. So what are missed performance targets? Those typically stem from technical breakdowns. Those stem from poor network connections. Those stem from system mismatches. So on top of having the great content strategy that you have, you need to think about how you're going to monitor this platform to ensure anytime content or a digital signage falls offline, you're getting alerted and somebody's watching it 24/7. Let me give you an example of an advertiser contract requirement. So as you're going out there, you're getting people to advertise on your platform, they're going to ask for a 95% uptime guarantee. Again, if you can't provide that to them, if you actually can't give them the reporting that shows them that you're meeting the SLAs, they're going to ask for clawbacks. They're also going to ask for proof of delivery with timestamps. When they say, okay, when did my content run? I want to know what days, where it showed, how many eyeballs saw it, and I need you to provide timestamps. You need to have a platform in place that can do that. They're also going to ask you for campaign compliance verification. So if they pay for a campaign, they're going to want to be able to have compliance and verify the campaign ran and how successful was it. I talked a little bit about revenue clawbacks before. SLAs are very stringent when it comes to somebody giving you money to run their advertising on your platform, and you need a way to be able to monitor against that SLA, as well as have an organization that can watch this 24/7. So we talked a lot about revenue protection, but what traditionally fails when you're doing IT monitoring? Typically, it comes down to network connection. We see it all the time. It doesn't happen really with a content delivery, but it has to do how that device is connected. And you need to make sure you have a platform in place that's constantly pinging that device to make sure that it's up and running. You might have displays that show, hey, it's online, but it's showing an error on the screen. How many times have we been in airports or any other place that has digital signage and the screen's on, but it's giving you some type of error? That's not acceptable. The client will ask for a clawback, and you need to have systems in place to make sure that doesn't happen. Another issue that happens is no visibility whether a purchase campaign actually ran. So maybe you can give them a report that says, well, the sign was up for 24 hours, but you also need to be able to prove to them that the campaign ran, like I said before, with the timestamps. So you need to be able for a reactive response only after advertisers complain. If you're hearing from the advertiser first, that's a problem. Your chances of renewal are very low. As you're giving them your monthly reports on how the campaigns work, you need to show them the uptime. You need to show them the uptime with timestamps. You need to show them when the campaign ran. And if you can't not do, required proof of delivery on their advertising campaign, It's going to hurt your brand. It's going to hurt everything else that's out there. I think one of the things for everybody that's online today, you got to look at the opportunity. The opportunity is that global digital signage is forecasted for a $45 billion market. This is a huge opportunity to take what was a cost center, turn it into a profit center. But you also need to be cognizant of the fact that businesses lose on average 9% of the annual revenue due to leakage. So on top of having that content, you need to make sure that you've got the software to monitor it, and you need to have another organization that can watch and put eyeballs on it 24/7. So I'm going to turn it back over now to Doug to let him walk through our technology partners. I think Will is up first.
Thanks, Mike. So just by way of introduction, if you're not familiar with AppSpace, there's literally too much to talk about on one slide, but we'll give it a shot. So AppSpace, if you are unfamiliar, like I said, it is a workplace experience platform, as we call it, cloud-based omni-channel CMS, as it says there. We cover a ton of use cases. So obviously digital signage, that's kind of the star of the show today. That can include traditional signage, of course, as well as more artistic signage, video walls, kiosks, wayfinding, and so on. But we can also handle typically more back of house, like employee comms, intranet, space management, desk booking, room booking, all that fun stuff, right? So we're a one-stop shop for that kind of experience, workplace, whether front of house or back of house. Specifically in the signage world, we cover what content displays and where, right? We are the CMS, the content management system that powers all of those displays, allowing publishers to choose exactly what content's going to show on what screen and what time, including maybe tools like day parting, scheduling, campaigns, and so on, maybe even multi-level publishing. So some folks can publish globally, some can only publish to their individual location, right? These things are really critical from the content and publishing standpoint, that you have a unified tool that can handle that and empower those folks to kind of get done what they need to do. Including, as it calls out there, right, those administrative controls to make sure the right content is managed by the right people at the right location. We service 170 of the Fortune 500, but also all kinds of small and medium businesses as well. It's a very scalable platform as far as that goes. So we can cover, right, whatever your deployment may be, which we'll probably talk about a little bit later. The one other thing I do want to touch on, as it notes there, is that we are an API-driven platform. So of course, we have all those tools built in a very intuitive interface to manage all of that content being published out to your displays. But that API capability allows us to work with partners like Utelligy and American Sound to take the platform even further, right? Dig into monitoring, dig into maybe even advertising platforms, right, that serve up ads kind of automatically. There's a lot of possibility there that we can really dig into further. I think that's all I'll say about AppSpace. I think I'll pass it back to Mike to talk about Utelligy.
Thanks, Will. For those of you that are not familiar with Utelligy, we are a global SaaS platform that automates, manages, and monitors the entire AV/UC estate, which digital signage falls into. So when it comes specifically to digital signage, we're able to track the display health of all your digital signage players out there, give you real-time content delivery statistics through Utelligy. We can provide predictive alerting and remote diagnostics. So I talked about this model. How do you look at your environment? How do you go from reactive to proactive? That's where Utelligy really comes into play. We can generate those compliance reporting to give you the BI along with historical data. The amount of data that you can pull out of Utelligy is very immense. It is something that your advertisers are going to want to see, and you can feel confident that we have a very robust reporting engine that give you all of the different statistics you need for your digital signage infrastructure. And obviously, we integrate with the AppSpace and many other manufacturers around the world, as well as we have many great providers like American Sound that is using Utelligy to be able to deliver these types of reporting, these types of analytics, and take their clients' environments from reactive to proactive. So I will throw it back to Doug.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, so American Sound is a audiovisual integrator and managed services provider. We do specifically a lot of work in the digital signage space to help customers roll out AppSpace and the hardware technology encompassing that. So displays, players, and other parts that are other vendors that are certified partners with the AppSpace platform. We help people roll that out as a solution, and we also provide a lot of custom software development services to allow people, like Will said, to take the platform as is, which is already very powerful and versatile, and take it to another level, right? So I always describe it as a little bit of like a like a nice, well-fitting tuxedo, right? Like out of the box, it's high quality, very well made, but you always want to take that to a tailor and have it be adjusted to kind of fit you specifically, and we're the tailor, right? We take those solutions and basically help people adopt them responsibly, and then also make sure that any customization and stuff like that that's needed for that platform is done to make basically create a ROI and a level of confidence in that platform from your company, that allows you to kind of keep using the platform and keep uh, rolling out that technology for years to come, right? So service provider intrinsically and providing professional services to people that are basically looking at app space and utility and other solutions to roll out ITSM and digital signage solutions worldwide. So how we all work together, just to fundamentally, as the service provider and as the channel partner component of this relationship, I can speak to this. A lot of software as a service solutions like utility and app space, they're incredibly powerful, super versatile, and like I said, mostly just need a delivery mechanism because, for all customers, both small, medium, and large, they have unique needs and requirements for how stuff needs to get rolled out, right? There's information security requirements, there's IT requirements from a network and infrastructure perspective. You have a large AV estate that needs to have stuff custom integrated with it, et cetera. And so what we do is basically work all together, us with AppSpace, with utility, to kind of capture the requirements of your estate and deliver a single solution together as a team that allows you to basically have the successful outcomes that you want. So, if you're looking at rolling out digital signage countrywide, worldwide, and you want to integrate advertising services or a hybrid ad exchange, like we've talked about, we're all able to kind of work together as a team and kind of say, all right, cool. So for this outcome that you guys have identified, this success criteria, American Sound is going to basically roll this out. Utelity, us on the back end, is going to provide all the data and analytics that you need in order to kind of help make that business case to your advertisers. And AppSpace is going to be the distribution mechanism for that, right? So it's a very well packaged environment, and we're really good at working together to kind of create that team effort to deploy a relatively complex solution relatively easily, right? So the way that we kind of do that on the back end, I guess, and how we kind of make that make sense for people at scale is after the rollout, we're effectively taking our data that we're collecting from AppSpace into Utelligy as kind of the data lake, and working together with different organizations to establish, hey, how are you guys measuring success? If success for you guys means, hey, we needed to have 5 nines of uptime and make sure that we can establish channel delivery on all of these different, signage displays, or if we need to verify which types of content was being sent out to which displays. We have some clients that have done, a combination, like Will said, of advertising content and internal organic content. All of those different data metrics are things that we measure, and we can effectively customize reporting based on, location, device type, content type, uptime correlation, and how that would impact revenue if we're talking about an advertising situation, average display health, and how we did with adhering to change management principles in IT for predictive maintenance scheduling. So all of those things are things that we can effectively package and give as a deliverable together, to be able to create, as for a business case effectively around the technology estate that says, like, hey, this was worth it for you guys, and here's how we're proving that. Right? Here's the hard, tangible thing that we can basically say it worked, right? So that's how we effectively do that, and that's done with the Utelligy platform, pulling data insights from AppSpace and integrating with other ITSM platforms such as ServiceNow and any other technology tools that are in play at your company. So to kind of talk about some of the business optimization that you then can act on with that data, I will give it back to Mr. Mike.
Thanks, Doug. I think we've talked a lot about, okay, what are the delivery models? What are the revenue models? How do I build a strategic plan? What are the applications and providers I need to have before I roll this out? And then ultimately, for you as the consumer is, how am I going to transform this data into decisions that drive growth for my organization? What is the strategic intelligence that I need to think about when we roll out this plan? And the first comes down to business optimization. And so you need to think about either your existing digital signage footprint or the one you're going to build and say, okay, I have to drive this by real estate decisions. So what real estate has the most eyeballs seeing it? Where do we place this digital signage? When I go and get advertisers, how am I going to get them and prove to them that I'm showing them, the audience that they want to see? So you need to think about where you're going to place these digital signage infrastructure and then who's going to be able to see it. You need to think about technology investment and really prioritize it when it comes down to revenue contribution. So you constantly got to be refreshing your environment. You've got to be putting more investment into the technology. And you need to really, as I mentioned before, think about the roadmap and think about how you're going to continue to take the profits and turn those into great opportunities for your advertisers, but make sure that you can keep this environment up 24/7. Your advertiser relationship health and renewal likelihood comes down to meeting the SLA. It comes down to showing them, here is the investment you made, here is the ROI that we're going to give you. And you need to make sure you have the systems and providers in place to do that. Traffic pattern analysis for pricing optimization. We all know that pricing changes every single year. So you're going to have the data from the systems that we're talking about to give to your advertisers and work with them as they're consuming this content, and then be able to be flexible when it comes to pricing. And so as much as you're setting up this infrastructure, you're delivering new types of revenue to the organization, you've also got to think about, how do I deliver quarterly business reviews? What goes into those QBRs for our advertisers? And you have to think about, okay, what is the performance I'm going to put out there, especially if this is your first time doing this initiative, against industry benchmarks. And I think that's where the app space, American Sound, and Utilities come into play. We've been doing this for a long time. We have many case studies and use cases around this. So let us be your consultants to help you put together this package to go up against industry benchmarks and be able to exceed the ones that are out there today. When you're looking at content strategy optimizations, people like AppSpace have been doing this for a long time. They see it from multiple different verticals. They're going to be able to work with you and say, okay, you ran these campaigns. Here's the data that's out of them. Here's the SLAs that you met. Here's how we tweak it. So definitely leverage the partnerships that are on this webinar today. When you think about new advertising partnerships, a lot of times you think about your business and you think about, who's a key client that we might want to use for advertising, but, also make sure that you're reaching out to this group, and we can give you other people that are kind of lookalike companies to help you drive that enhancement moving forward. And then especially when it comes down to roadmaps of technologies, we're dealing with the technologies every single day. We can help you forecast out what type of refresh cycles that need there. We're going to be able to provide the platforms that's showing, here's this type of signage solution from screens as compared to these types of screens. How are they benchmarking? How are they performing? What have the most uptime? What have the most downtime? And we'll be able to help guide you as it relates to what are the best hardware platforms for you to really make sure that you have the right infrastructure to deliver that ROI back to your advertisers. So I think at this point in time, we're going to talk a little bit about the bottom line, and then we're going to end with 2 case studies. So what have you learned here today? What's the bottom line? Digital sign advertising creates a new revenue stream. This is something that you could take to your management today and say, hey, if you have the infrastructure, here's how we make more money off the infrastructure. Or if we want to roll out an infrastructure, I have some new ideas on how we can do this. What it's going to allow you to do is offset or eliminate technology costs. It's obviously going to generate measurable profit for you. It's going to fund ongoing innovation for your organization. And we've talked about data a lot. You're going to be able now to be able to take the data from our platforms and providers and make business decisions based on that data. And then you can maintain your primary communication objectives. So at this point in time, I'm going to turn it back over to Doug and let him give you some real world examples.
Yeah, so the first one is I'm not allowed to kind of release their name, but it's a really good case study because it's pretty much exactly what we're talking about. This is an organization, massive retailer, thousands of stores worldwide. They basically sat down and said, hey, we have a problem. The problem is that they've invested in all of this digital signage display technology for all of these stores, and they have no idea if it's working and what success even is, and their ability to plan ahead and future-proof themselves and innovate is effectively kind of handcuffed until they have a way to solve the visibility problem, which is effectively, is the technology that we have in the stores even effective? Should we continue investing in that, or do we need to go a different direction, right? So they came to us, they came to me with this problem, and they basically, presented it, and I kind of walked through it with them. And since the fundamental issue with that scenario is visibility, we went the utility route. We said, hey, you know what? If we can get you visibility on all of the technology in your stores and how content is actually doing and what your uptimes are, it makes it a lot easier for us to say, hey, here's what this is worth to you guys financially to continue investing in this approach, or if we should go a different direction and do more displays or less, or different types and different types of content. Those are all things that you can't make good educated decisions on without the data about how things are actually working to date, right? Historical data to actually prove your point. So we rolled out utility across the state. They also had a pretty significant service delivery issue, and just that when stuff was going down, they were kind of manually reactively opening tickets based on just people calling them from, employees calling them from their stores. And it was taking weeks to fix broken displays or to get on site and actually, rectify issues. So with the deployment of Utelligy, we gained a bunch of things. We got a lot of visibility on all of the assets, so all of the digital signage players and the TVs, and a lot of the AV infrastructure in all of the retail locations in North America. We now get constant real-time reporting on all of that technology in every site, which is awesome. So we can say, hey, I know exactly how many displays and how many digital signage players are working at any given point in time, and over a range of days, right? So we can say over the past 60 days, here's what the uptime for that looked like. And we can also say, hey, we fixed all of these incidents when something did break that we couldn't fix remotely, which, by the way, like 80% of the time we can fix stuff remotely. So we saved a bunch of money on rolling trucks. But the really cool thing was we were also able to say, like, hey, your guys' average SLA for mean time to resolution was probably 3.5 to 4 weeks before this entire thing got set up. And after the fact, we're averaging right now less than 2 days from creation of an incident, somebody actually saying, hey, this thing is broken, which usually is something that we're self-reporting anyway with alerts, to having the issue actually be resolved, which is an insane improvement in quality of life as far as how stuff is actually working and how people are actually fixing that problem on a day-to-day basis. And we're able to kind of deliver that data to that client, that enterprise, to basically say, hey, your guys' retail technology was working, but it's working even better now because we have all of this automation in place to basically keep it alive. And you can feel confident and good about your continued investments and continued real estate growth based on this data, right? You can say, hey, these environments, these locations, and these door types are the ones that succeed, and these ones are the ones that don't do as well. And here are the reasons why. And that was never possible for them before we went that route, right? So that's a really great case study. I have another one I can toss over to Will here. I have to stop sharing and then start again real quick though, because I'm having a PowerPoint problem. But Will, you can go ahead and start it if you want.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, and I think before Will goes, just to let everybody know, for your colleagues that weren't here, we'll be sending out a link to the recording. We're going to be putting it on YouTube as well. And I think the goal that we had when we created this webinar was really to provide education. Obviously, if there's individual features and functionalities you want to see from the app space, the Utelligy, the American Sounds of the world, reach out to us individually. But we really wanted to focus on how we can bring educational content. And so we will let Will wrap us up, and then we'll go into some questions.
Right. So I always love talking about this case study. Costco, obviously, kind enough to let us reference them by name. One of my favorite customers to work with. One, because they're just really cool folks. But two, it's a cool story, and it combines some of the themes that we've been talking about. So as you can see there, they rolled out AppSpace as the CMS for pretty much every location for both internal-facing displays as well as customer-facing. And what I love about this story is it was a real kind of convergence of needs, identified needs and circumstance that pulled all this together. So interestingly, Costco was evaluating AppSpace as CMS for some of their customer-facing signage, at the same time that internally, right, internal communication teams identified the need to really double down on engaging, right, Costco employees. Costco is known for its workplace culture, but as locations expand, and especially right around COVID hit, which always a bummer to bring up these days, but still spurned some of this. They really wanted to double down on comms, on that engagement. So actually, those two kind of separate initiatives ended up coming together and intertwining in a really interesting way. And it really was successful because of the strategic kind of holistic approach they took and the technology stack. Right. As much as I would say that AppSpace by itself could solve every problem in the world, it can't. It takes this kind of unified approach to really get the most out of deployment. So what that resulted in is over 2,000 signage devices being rolled out in just North America, and that occurring in about 2 months. Right, 2 months to implement that many signs in a strategic, cohesive way across nearly 600 of their locations initially for that rollout. That type of rapid deployment, rapid successful deployment at that scale is really only possible when you have the kind of strategic like tech stack and vision that we're talking about today, right? Doing that ad hoc, you're just not going to see that level of deployment and success. The other thing that I really love about this is that while obviously some of the screens, as I mentioned, are customer facing, some are more back of house, it is combining those two scenarios. So of course, front of house, right? Customer facing, very controlled in terms of what promotions, what things are being shown to actual Costco customers, but still some control at the individual store level. So if there's something unique, right, to a Costco center, they have that ability to tweak at the local level. And same thing back of house. You have that kind of corporate top level governance for comms, as well as local and regional contributors for maybe individual employee recognition and shout out. And then of course, all managed and monitored from one tech stack. So on the IT side, it is manageable at that scale, right, at that speed.
Awesome.
Alrighty.
Thanks, Will.
Go ahead, Mike.
So looks like we've got about 5 questions. We'll go through those. We've got about 17 minutes left. So Doug, I'll let you take the first one.
All right.
How do you see typical companies manage their digital signage today before they come to American Sound? What are you seeing out there?
Sure. Yeah. So the first comment I have is I don't know if there is such a thing as a typical company. A lot of what we've talked about on this webinar, and I think I've brought up this point a couple of times, is the importance of kind of fitting the solutions and the workflow to the specific customer needs. And that is always the approach that I take whenever somebody new contacts us about needing something to basically help upgrade how they're doing things today. But to that point, as far as the different types of situations, I think a lot of organizations a little bit fall into, I hate to say a trap because it feels aggressive, but basically, they feel like there's an obligation, or they feel like they have a very good impression of, or underestimating a little bit, I think, the complexity and the importance of really granularly managing your digital signage solution. A lot of people kind of treat digital signage as like a necessary evil, and they just need to get something assigned to AppSpace or a different cloud service so that they can push out JPEGs to screens and effectively check a box, right? And the problem with that approach, and the reason why we always try and push people towards doing things more intentionally, is it's disingenuous. It also is kind of a waste of money. Because like if you're not intentionally spending time and energy and resources on doing digital signage well and effectively maximizing your usage of that technology, the money that you spent on rolling out those TVs and the signage players and the licensing for whatever it was, and even my own services, it's just not worth it unless you're going to do it on purpose, right? I always say it for everything. Like if you're going to do something, do it really well. Because there just aren't enough hours in the day to kind of just do things just for the sake of checking a box. So a lot of the people that come to us are people that were like, hey, we tried to kind of roll out digital signs. We went pretty minimal on it just because like we just needed to get stuff on screens. I hear that all the time, and I'm like, cool, but what you did was you ignored an entire workflow that you needed to have in order to basically say, what does working actually mean, right? Like what is success for you? Because if it's just putting graphics on screens, cool, but it's never just that. Your content team and your marketing team and all of those folks have their own goals and KPIs that they need to hit to basically prove that what they did was worthwhile. And if you're not able to track that stuff and you're not utilizing technology to do that, then you're missing the point, right? And I think some of that kind of strategy there and intentional planning is what people kind of miss today sometimes when they're going through that process.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. So here is our second question. I know the traditional OOH or out of home has the advertisers for end users to generate the revenue share. Do you offer this type of service that has advertisers marry the two together, or is it on the shoulders of the dealer / end user to get the advertisers? So
That's a good
Will,
question.
Doug, do you guys want to take that?
I can take part of that. I can take the back part. And, as far as the type of service required, Jeff or Jeffrey, sorry, I don't know which one you go by. The answer is going to depend a little bit on how those ads are getting bought and sold. So if we're talking about a scenario, I think we referenced it earlier in the presentation, but if you're doing some kind of online ad exchange where people can self-serve, buy and sell advertising on a separate platform, and then stream those and integrate those into AppSpace as a card or a live stream, the scope of that service that we can provide is kind of a little bit dependent on the ad exchange and then also how the customer wants to function, right? Because there are some people that have their own marketing or their own sales teams, almost business development, that do that for them, like on staff folks. And then there are going to be some people that have never done advertising before in their whole life that are like, hey, I need somebody to actually show me how this works and kind of help manage the ad sales part of it as well. And so we can do either, right? And so we've seen that both ways. It's going to depend a lot on the organization and just kind of what level of service they're effectively looking for. Will, did you have anything to add to that on the AppSpace side?
No, I think you pretty much covered it. I'll just say that I've seen all kinds, right, over the years, whether it is integration with that type of digital ad exchange, where essentially, on the AppSpace side, right, you're just giving time in your content loop, maybe it's the whole loop, but essentially those ads kind of programmatically being served up via integration. And I've seen a more, I guess I'd call it manual approach, right, where it's a direct relationship with an advertiser, scheduling, receiving that advertising content directly, scheduling it, and providing, for example, the proof of play metrics from AppSpace combined with the uptime metrics from Utelligy, right, and more that direct relationship. So kind of depends, but yeah, the team here can help either way, right? Get that configured and set up.
And then to hit Jeff's second question, because this is a quick one, Jeff, for occupancy data or like motion tracking with cameras or anything like that for the individual displays, I know that's important as a metric for ad sales occasionally, depending on the type. Those are data and analytics that we usually gather in Utelligy because those are effectively devices that we monitor and manage as part of kind of the overall solution. So that's something that we can do.
Oh, that makes sense. And from the Utelligy side, we've been in business 16 years. We built over 1,300 drivers. We've got a library of 3,500 models. So, there's a lot that we can manage in the entire digital signage ecosystem as well as the AV/UC environment. So we'd love to explore these a little bit deeper. Jumping into the next question, what's the biggest issues you see when you meet a new project? Is a lack of plan, lack of manageability, lack of design. I know from the Utelligy side, most of the time it's lack of data. So when we're asking them MTTR, MTTD, current trouble tickets, things of that nature, they're like, we don't have a lot of that data. Where from an IT side, they usually have platforms in place and they can give you all those types of things. And so I think from the Utelligy side, it's the lack of historical data on how the environment is performing. So obviously, once they implement Utelligy, we can get them there. But it usually comes down to the lack of historical performance data. Doug, Will, anything to add there?
Yeah, I mean, that's consistent with my experience. I think digital signage kind of falls underneath a little bit of like an AV umbrella sometimes, where at some organizations, those types of edge technologies were exempted or not included in standard IT SLAs that were created for the rest of the IT organization there, because it might be their own department or, in facilities or organizational structure stuff. So a lot of the challenge is kind of helping people even create the operational structure and building those SLAs for AV and digital signage and stuff like that to kind of bring that into the IT organization at those companies and help kind of keep things consistent, which is kind of an intangible value add that we end up providing a lot of the time as a team as part of these efforts, because what we're talking about is a lot of IT service management principles being applied to digital investments and advertising, right? What we're effectively doing is giving data and a lot of stuff that you would get from laptops and stuff today. And because we do that in IT for a reason, and that's for, data-driven insights and business planning for those and for that hardware, we're applying those principles to digital signage as a way to effectively keep things consistent and help organizations plan and finance their stuff better, because it's actually a lot of things that we learned how to do well already for other types of technology, and we're just learning from past mistakes on that one, right? So yeah, to Mike's point, it's usually that. It's usually helping just create those processes and workflows for the first time when we're building the plan to roll out the digital signage solution.
Awesome. And we got our last question here. I'll answer the first part, and then I want to get Will and Doug's input. What internal data would a company need to provide to help it develop a plan to turn its digital signage into a profit center? So it's a very generic question. But I mean, from the Utelity perspective, obviously you have to have, what's your guiding principle for the project. But we're going to ask a lot about the infrastructure. We're going to ask what type of systems do you have in place today? What type of digital signage infrastructure have you used in the past? What type of performance have you had out of it? How do you monitor and manage it? As well as what is the technology roadmap that you're willing to invest in to be able to get this from a reactive to a proactive environment. So a lot of it comes down to the assets and the devices that you have today. So Will or Doug?
Yeah, well, if you could take that from the app space side, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the technology point is key, but I think also, actually going back to something you were saying, Doug, around kind of ownership and procedure and so on, is also just the strategy, right? A lot of times we'll start to work on a deployment and there's an identified need for signage and maybe comms and maybe advertising, but the actual strategy, like what are the goals? What are you trying to accomplish? Funny enough, aren't always right fully laid out before we get to all the fun tech talk. So I think it's key to bring the right stakeholders to the table as well to even to make sure that the technical side of the deployment matches those strategic goals. Which I don't want to state the obvious, but it's easy. Everybody gets a little ahead of themselves and excited about the deployment without stopping to think, okay, what do we need to hit, right? What are the benchmarks that this technology is going to enable? So I always recommend taking a moment to step back and almost think in the abstract to help complement the real material side of the deployment.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly right. I usually don't want to I don't want to sell somebody something, or I don't want people to buy stuff before they know how they're going to win with it, right? It's not enough to buy the thing. They also have to know how to use it. And I think the main thing in the data gathering and analysis that I usually do with new clients or partners is kind of sitting down and looking at what does your current setup look like, right? Like what are you guys already doing well that we can make sure we keep doing well? Because like I said with the ad services thing, there might be a team internally that kind of already does some of that stuff. There might be an existing ad exchange, and it's just connecting things together and kind of figuring out what current state looks like, and then reconciling that with the goals, right? So that the only way for us to build a bridge from from present to future is understand where we are and where we're going, right? So understanding how how you do digital signage today. Is there anybody that manages that? How does that work with the marketing team? How does that work with IT from like a hardware and asset perspective? And understanding that process so that we can figure out what synergy do we need to develop between those different departments in order for us to effectively bridge that into a future state with new success criteria. That's effectively the process, and that's the stuff that we're gonna always do some discovery on and need to find out.
Awesome. Will, Doug, this has been fun. Really appreciate everybody joining. We plan to put out more content like this that is around the educational side. So if there's any other types of content you want to see, please let us know. If you want to get a hold of us individually, we can all be found on LinkedIn. But really appreciate everybody's time today, and have a great rest of your week.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.